Cannot pause on local development or support in the new economy. Businesses need to come together to address the blind part of our socio-economic health, ensuring our turnaround direct stimulation efforts. Or to discuss how we can ensure we remain inclusive in our efforts to rebuild the economy by integrating our youth into our COVID-19 response plans. We are joined via Skype by Sandy Bukula, Interim CEO at Operation Hunger. Thank you very much for joining us on SABC News. We appreciate your time.
Hi, Flo. Good evening, and to your viewers.
You're asking businesses to come together to address the blind part of our socioeconomic health. Has big business failed pre-COVID-19 to include the youth?
There has been activity that was encouraging in terms of absorption, but it hasn't escalated and accelerated as much as the need. So I would not say that it hasn't tried. Mm-hmm. We have had, places where we have begun, but we have not done much. So our behavior in terms of of an inclusive society, we have been really moving very slowly in ensuring that we are able to get to a point whereby we have everybody included in the economy.
Does the rapid digitalization of Africa and specifically South Africa due to the pandemic cause concern for the missing middle who are facing the brunt of the pandemic? Just a couple of days ago, we were speaking to a gentleman who was promoting, the use of robots, and some of these robots will be used, in hospitals and in some businesses. And one of the concerns I had was this means, essentially less jobs for people, for youth in particular. Is there that sort of concern at this time?
Absolutely, there is. Pre the COVID-19 lockdown period in South Africa, we had about 6.7 million South Africans who were not, who were unemployed. And the reports then came back to say that we will be expecting, post the COVID, at least about 370,000 jobs being lost. But we have also seen, with ourselves that we have had, a number of people just basically in need of aid during this time. And, the level 3, when basically most of the South African economic activities were resuming, we still had quite a large number of people that are still misplaced, that have lost jobs, that haven't actually integrated back to the economic activity. So then this leaves us with a huge gap of people actually being unemployed, and the ones that were able to participate productively, within the economy, not having enough, resources to be able to engage in this specific environment. As you would know, Flo, is that, like the South African government, which is great, has regulated precautionary measures and guidelines, for businesses to resume. But we forget that, our context within South Africa and basically our demographics are really in different models in different places. You see what I mean? So if you're going to think about somebody that was at a time had to create their own job, before, in order for them to actually bring income in the home. Those people don't have, reserves of income that would make them ready and prepare themselves to go back to the economy and actually participate right away. Yeah. You see what I mean?
Now, what does the local economic development look like in the new economy? And no doubt, we will have to have a new economy. And how do we go about redefining South Africa and maybe Africa's recovery toolkit against, what's essentially happened now?
Flo, the most important thing I think that is very fundamental at the moment is the behavior of actually promoting, South African businesses, our community projects, our basically our South African made enterprises, our entrepreneurs buying locally. That is one of the biggest point that will help us actually try and recover, because if we're seeing a lot of activity happening happening in money transacting, in between ourselves, then, like the burden of actually having so many people being dependent on aid, which is what we're having right now, and actually having an accelerated number that is escalating to further people being dependent on aid, that would actually try and assist us. So if we can actually look at a wholesome and a holistic, inclusive economy. But obviously, it's going to require different regimens because obviously we're so diverse in our own way. But if we can try and capitalize and maximize, on those skill sets that are sitting at home at the moment and try to involve them in basic projects that they can be. So basically, policies obviously would have to be more flexible and be adaptable, to the current changing environment. Because I don't think that this actually is new. This is what we actually originally were supposed to have been thinking about, to have adaptable policies, environment that is actually flexible to adapt problems. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. Sandy, one of the other things that I'm always talking about is the idea of, young people also creating their own opportunities, starting their own businesses. Just before I spoke to you, I was speaking to a 30-year-old farmer in the Northwest who's not only creating opportunities, of course, for herself, for employment, but also for other young people. Should that also not be something that we really sort of start to push and encourage, and not just asking corporates and big businesses to open up to the youth, because, they're not necessarily forced to do so. So perhaps the youth should also, in a way, also look at ways of creating their own opportunities. And maybe what we should then be saying is that we should be nurturing perhaps an environment where we can create the space where young people are able to maybe flourish in that way. Is it not time maybe to also change the narrative that we should always be seeking employment as young people? Well, I'm not young anymore, but yeah.
That's absolutely correct, Flo. But I want to just present something different from what you're saying. I'll just give you a simple example with Operation Hunger, the organization that I represent. Our beneficiaries are about 2.4 million, and basically 60% of those 60 million, the 60% of that 2.4 million beneficiaries are actually young people. And basically what we do is we design models and programs that enable people to be self-sustainable. And what we get at our doors is usually young people that are running cooperatives, that are running innovative, that have got innovative ideas that can change the communities with which they live in, that they become more self-sustainable. Now, the challenge that we have faced is that once we have got all of these young people who are doing the access to market, all right, and the behavior in the consumer to purchase South African is what really drastically needs to change. So we are not really short of young people with beautiful skills, cognitive skills, who's got beautiful ideas. We're not short of that. Unfortunately, we haven't had an opportunity where we are documenting enough of those beautiful projects that come through those specific communities. I'll just give you a simple example. We've got of a project in Hammersdale. And we've got women that have a bakery there in Section 4. We've got all over and above that we have subsistence farming that we are now integrating to commercial farming. And after a long time, we have been able to manage to get, these community projects into, the commercial supply chain. So we're not really short so much of, the talent in the country. What is short is actually the space to guide, and to incubate and make that happen. You see what I mean? So we're not that short. And I'm sure Flo, when we had the last stats from, from Stats SA with regards to the unemployment gap, it's actually people that are graduates, that have gone to school, that have got the necessary skills, but not so much of the experience. So that is what we're needing to do. We need to nurture more and create, red tapes and bureaucracy that is able, to soften that, that transition and that integration.
All right, Sandy Bukula, an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I wish I had more time. Thank you so much for joining us here on SABC News. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Flo. Thanks, bye.
All right, that's Sandy Bukula, CEO of Operation Hunger, and of course, talking about including the youth in our socio-economic health.